Hello, dear YouTube viewers. I hope you are doing well. Okay, let's start our video. The evening unfolded beautifully, the kind that feels touched with magic. The venue glowed under warm amber lights, casting soft reflections on the polished floors. Fairy lights curled along the walls, flickering gently like captured fireflies. A soft mix of music floated through the air, blending perfectly with the hum of cheerful conversation. The tables were decorated with ivory linens, golden candles, and fresh flowers whose sweet scent drifted through the room. It had taken days of planning, running from one store to another, adjusting menus, coordinating guest lists, but seeing everything come together filled me with a deep, satisfying pride. Tonight was meant to celebrate a milestone we had worked hard for, a moment that brought our closest friends and family under one roof. Watching the guests arrive, smiling and complimenting the decor, I felt my heart swell. This was the night I wanted everything to be perfect. My husband stood across the room, greeting people with his usual calm charm. He had always been steady in social settings, not too loud, not too quiet, just present enough to make others feel comfortable. People liked him for that. Our relationship, while not without its complications, had a foundation built on years of understanding. At least, that's what I believed. Lately, though, I had sensed small shifts, moments when he seemed lost in thought, distant even when surrounded by people. Tonight, there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite place, a mix of nervousness and determination, like someone preparing for a moment they couldn't avoid. I brushed it off, telling myself it was simply the pressure of hosting. After all, everything about the evening felt perfect. Nothing, absolutely nothing, hinted at the storm that was quietly building, waiting for its moment to break. The guests began arriving one by one, each entrance adding a new spark of energy to the room. My closest friends swept in first, their faces lighting up as they took in the decor. They pulled me into warm hugs, whispering how beautiful everything looked and how much they had been looking forward to the evening. Family members arrived next, my sister with her loud, contagious laugh, my mother fussing over the flower arrangements as if she were part of the planning team, and my cousins greeting everyone with cheerful enthusiasm. A few co-workers from my husband's office showed up as well, dressed sharply and carrying that mix of politeness and curiosity people bring when entering someone's personal life. Each arrival brought a fresh ripple of laughter and conversation, and the room quickly filled with the comfortable buzz of people who felt at ease. Soon, the early phase of the party blended into a smooth rhythm. The soft clinking of glasses mingled with the mellow background music. Waiters moved effortlessly between conversations, offering trays of appetizers that disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. The aroma of the main dishes drifted in from the kitchen, rich, warm, promising. Everywhere I looked, people were smiling, talking, enjoying the atmosphere I had painstakingly created. It filled me with a quiet pride, the kind that warms you from the inside out. All the late nights and planning were suddenly worth it. My husband seemed to be settling into the evening, too. He laughed at a joke one of his friends told, gesturing animatedly with his hands. He chatted with guests, refilled drinks, and even posed for a few pictures. From the outside, he appeared completely normal, calm, composed, perfectly in control. Watching him, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe I had imagined the tension I'd sensed earlier. Maybe tonight would truly unfold the way I hoped. But then, as I wove through the room to check on the guests again, I paused beside him for a brief moment. "Everything okay?" I asked softly, smoothing my hand along his arm. He gave me a smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," he murmured, glancing away too quickly. I felt a small tug of concern, but with so much happening around us, I chose to brush it aside. It was a big night. People often got nervous or overwhelmed. I told myself it was nothing. Little did I know, that tiny moment of hesitation was the first quiet crack in an evening that seemed flawless. A calm before a storm I never saw coming. As the evening carried on, small details began to tug at the edges of my attention. Details I initially ignored but couldn't quite escape. My husband, who normally sipped his drink slowly and paced himself throughout an event, was already on his third glass. He wasn't drinking recklessly, but there was a certain urgency in the way he lifted the glass to his lips, a quiet determination that felt out of place. And instead of mingling as naturally as he had earlier, he retreated into stretches of silence, standing in corners or near the balcony door as if he needed distance from the crowd. A few guests noticed. My friend Sarah leaned in at one point and whispered, "Is he okay? He seems distracted." I forced a smile and brushed it off, but the question simmered in my mind long after she walked away. Inside, my thoughts grew restless. Was it something from work? He had been under pressure recently, though he never admitted how much it affected him. Or was it something at home, a conversation we hadn't had, a worry he hadn't shared? I replayed the last few weeks, searching for a moment that might explain tonight's shift. There had been times in the past when he acted unpredictably under stress. Once years ago, he had gotten up in the middle of a dinner with friends and left without explanation, only to return hours later with an apology he couldn't properly articulate. Another time, he withdrew completely for days when something overwhelmed him. Those moments had always unsettled me, but they had become rare. I believed we had moved past them. Tonight, though, some of those old shadows seemed to be creeping back. When I approached him again, hoping a gentle question might steady him, he turned toward me with an expression I couldn't decipher. His voice was low, almost too low to hear over the music, as he said, "Tonight will be different." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. Different how? I searched his face for clarity, but he looked away before I could ask anything. A chill ran through me, subtle but unmistakable. Still, with guests depending on me and the party in full swing, I forced myself to stay focused. I smiled, served food, chatted with relatives, and pretended everything was fine. But beneath the surface, unease threaded through every movement. Every time I glanced his way, I sensed something building in him, an internal weight, a decision he had already made. And although I didn't know what it was, I felt the unmistakable truth. Something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. It happened so suddenly that for a moment, I thought I had imagined it. The music softened, fading into a gentle murmur as my husband stepped toward the small stage near the center of the room. Guests gradually turned their attention to him, their conversation slowing, then stopping completely. Someone even tapped the microphone for him as he reached it, causing a small echo that rippled through the hall. A few people clapped lightly, expecting a sweet toast or a heartfelt thank you speech. After all, that was what a night like this usually called for. I felt a flutter of pride. Perhaps he wanted to acknowledge the effort I had put into the event. For a moment, everything felt normal again. He cleared his throat and began speaking, his voice calm at first. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, offering a small smile. "It means more than you know." His words flowed politely, even warmly, expressing appreciation for our friends, our family, the support we had received over the years. He talked about shared memories, long friendships, and the joy of having everyone together under one roof. People nodded, smiling, sipping their drinks as they listened. I stood slightly behind the crowd, a gentle pride blooming in my chest. But then, almost imperceptibly, his tone began to shift. The warmth wavered. His hands, which had been clasped casually in front of him, tightened around the microphone. His breathing grew heavier, uneven. He paused mid-sentence, staring down at the floor as if searching for the right words. A nervous murmur spread through the room. "I've been keeping something from all of you," he finally said, his voice trembling. My heart dropped into my stomach. The guests exchanged confused glances. A few leaned forward, something I should have said a long time ago. He looked up, and for the first time all evening, I saw the storm behind his eyes, raw, unsettled, determined. The confession followed like a sudden fracture, splitting the room in half. "I lost my job 3 months ago," he said, the words breaking free with a force that made the air feel heavier. Gasps rose immediately. He continued before anyone could react. "I didn't tell anyone. Not even—" His eyes flicked to me, and I felt my breath catch. "Not even my wife." A wave of shock rolled through the room. He pressed on, voice cracking under the pressure. "We're in serious financial trouble. I've been lying about going to work, lying about everything. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to face it." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Around me, the silence was absolute, broken only by whispers, sharp intakes of breath, hands covering mouths. No one knew how to respond. Some guests stared at him in disbelief. Others looked at me with pity or confusion. The room, moments earlier warm and cheerful, now felt cold and suffocating. My chest tightened as if something inside me had shattered. Betrayal, confusion, humiliation, all of it surged through me at once. I tried to breathe, but each breath came shallow and uneven. My mind raced backward through the weeks, reevaluating every moment, every late return home, every tired expression he brushed aside. He kept talking, but I could barely hear him over the pounding in my ears. The world had tilted, cracked open, and spilled something I was never prepared to see. The perfect night had collapsed in the span of a single confession, leaving me standing in the ruins of everything I thought I knew. For a few long seconds, the room remained frozen. Then, like a dam cracking under pressure, chaos began to spill out in every direction. A couple of my husband's co-workers stepped forward, trying to steady him. They murmured things like, "Take it easy," and "Let's talk outside," but he waved them off with a shaky hand. On the other side of the room, small groups formed instantly, people whispering, exchanging theories, judging what had unfolded. I could hear my aunt saying, "3 months?" And she had no idea, in a tone filled with disbelief. Someone else muttered something about irresponsibility. A few guests, uncomfortable with the rising tension, quietly slipped toward the exit. Their shoes clicked softly on the floor, the sound somehow louder than the music still playing awkwardly in the background. My own chest felt tight, like a fist had locked itself around my ribs. Anger burned hot, rushing up my throat, tangled with a deep, stinging hurt. Betrayal pulsed through my body in waves. How could he hide something so huge? How could he stand there, only now, surrounded by family and friends, choosing this moment of all moments to shatter everything? My mind raced with questions, none of which had answers. I felt exposed, humiliated, blindsided in front of the people closest to me. I pushed through the crowd, my footsteps heavy, my pulse pounding in my ears. When I reached him, I felt my voice shaking. "Why now?" I demanded. "Why would you do this here? In front of everyone?" The words came out sharp, edged with the raw ache inside me. He turned toward me, eyes red and glassy. "I couldn't keep lying," he whispered. "I couldn't pretend anymore." His voice wavered, filled with emotion, but it didn't soothe the storm raging inside me. "I didn't know how to tell you. Every day it got harder." "That's not an excuse," I snapped. "You had weeks, months, and you waited until tonight." My voice rose, drawing more attention, though I didn't care. Everything around us blurred into the background. He ran a trembling hand through his hair, stepping back slightly. "I'm sorry," he said, but the apology felt thin, fragile, nothing compared to the weight of what he'd done. "I was scared. I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't want to be a failure." His voice cracked, slipping between defensiveness and desperation. At moments, he seemed apologetic. In others, he pushed back, saying, "You don't understand how hard it's been." His unpredictability only fueled the tension. More people were leaving now, unable to stand the emotional explosion. Others hovered, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they didn't hear every word. The air had shifted, thick with discomfort, shock, and the sharp sting of exposed secrets. The once perfect party had dissolved into a scene of chaotic whispers and shattered illusions. And standing at the center of it all, I felt the full weight of a reality I never imagined I'd face. As the chaos slowly settled, the atmosphere shifted from loud shock to a heavy, uncomfortable silence. One by one, guests began slipping out, some offering tight, sympathetic smiles, others avoiding eye contact entirely. A few tried to comfort me with gentle touches on my arm, murmuring things like, "Call me if you need anything," or "I'm so sorry." I nodded, thanked them, and forced a polite smile, even as my throat felt tight and my hands trembled. Every farewell felt like another reminder of the night's collapse. Just an hour earlier, people were laughing, dancing, celebrating. Now, they were leaving early, eager to escape the wreckage. As the last cluster of guests stepped out, the once lively room seemed to sag under the weight of what had happened. Plates of untouched food sat abandoned on the tables. Decorations that had felt magical now looked almost mocking. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. My husband stood near the stage, shoulders slumped, avoiding my eyes. For a moment, neither of us moved. The silence between us felt thick enough to drown in. Finally, I walked toward him, my footsteps slow, deliberate. "Why?" The word came out in a whisper, but it carried every ounce of pain inside me. He looked up, startled, as if he hadn't expected me to speak first. "Why tonight? Why like this? You could have told me privately. You could have told me weeks ago." He rubbed his forehead, exhaling shakily. "I know," he said. "I know I should have, but I couldn't. Every time I tried, the words got stuck." His voice cracked with emotion. "I've been waking up every morning feeling sick with guilt. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think straight. I felt like I was living in a lie I created." He paused, trying to steady himself. "Tonight, when I saw everyone here, people who trust me, who believe in us, I just broke." I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, holding myself together. "You broke? You broke." My voice trembled with anger. "What about me? What about us? Did you even think about how this would destroy me in front of everyone?" He winced as if the words were physical blows. "I didn't plan to say it here," he said quietly. "But when I saw you smiling, acting like everything was perfect, I realized how far I'd let the lie go. I couldn't keep pretending. I thought if I kept this from you any longer, I'd lose you anyway." His explanation spilled out in uneven fragments. Fear of disappointing me, guilt eating him alive, desperation to stop carrying the burden alone. He tried to explain how walking into work every morning with no job to go to felt like sinking. How he felt trapped in a spiral he didn't know how to escape. "I didn't do it to hurt you," he whispered. "I did it because I couldn't breathe anymore." I closed my eyes, absorbing his words, feeling a complicated mix of sympathy, anger, and heartbreak. "You still had a choice," I said softly. "And you chose this." He lowered his head, tears gathering in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, but the apology felt like it floated in the air, not yet able to reach me. The party was over. The evening was ruined. And now, standing in the quiet aftermath, it was clear nothing about our lives would ever be the same again. When the last guest had gone and the lights dimmed, the silence of the house pressed in from every corner. I found myself sitting alone on one of the empty chairs, staring at the spot where my husband had stood only an hour earlier, confessing truths that rewrote the entire story of our last few months. His words kept replaying in my mind. "I lost my job. I didn't tell you. I couldn't pretend anymore." Each repetition felt like a fresh bruise, tender and aching. I thought about all the mornings he'd left the house with a forced smile, all the nights he'd come home exhausted, all the moments I'd missed the signs. How had I not seen what was happening right in front of me? Or worse, had I seen it and chosen not to look closer? Trust, once shaken, doesn't fall apart all at once. It cracks slowly, first invisibly, then openly, until the pieces feel almost impossible to hold together. I wondered what this meant for our marriage. Was it built on something strong enough to survive this blow? Or had those small shifts I had ignored been warnings all along? I questioned everything. His choices, my own blind spots, the foundation we thought we had. Our future, once a simple line stretching ahead, suddenly felt like a series of uncertain crossroads. As I sat there, my emotions tangled, anger that he hid the truth, sadness for what we had lost, fear of what came next, and a faint, stubborn thread of compassion for the man who had clearly been drowning under his own secrets. Was forgiveness possible? Should I fight for us, or walk away before more pieces broke? Nothing felt clear. Not yet, but one realization did settle inside me. The perfect party I had worked so hard to create, every detail flawless, every moment orchestrated, had been a fragile illusion. A surface-level beauty, covering a deeper imbalance neither of us had confronted. I had poured myself into creating a night worthy of celebration, while underneath, something between us had already begun to fracture. And maybe that was the turning point, understanding that perfection is not the same as truth. That a marriage can look seamless from the outside while silently unraveling on the inside. That tonight didn't break us, it simply revealed how broken we already were. Now, in the quiet aftermath, I knew I had choices to make. Not rushed, not emotional, but honest. Choices that would shape not just our future as a couple, but my own future as a woman who had finally seen the truth beneath the glow of the lights. When I finally stood up from that lonely chair, the weight of the night settled into a clearer shape. My husband was sitting quietly across the room, his hands clasped, his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked smaller somehow, like a man stripped of every mask, left only with his fear and regret. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, with a steady breath, I walked toward him. "We need time," I said softly but firmly. The words felt both painful and necessary. Not forever, but enough to understand what this means for us. I wasn't ready to walk away entirely, but I also wasn't ready to pretend his confession hadn't shaken the foundation of our marriage. A temporary separation, not of love, but of space, felt like the only honest option. We needed distance to process, to breathe, to see things without the distortion of shock. And if we were ever going to rebuild, it had to be with truth, not buried secrets. He nodded slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. "I understand," he whispered. "I'll do whatever you need." His voice trembled, but there was sincerity in it, a willingness to confront what he had been running from. For the first time that night, I felt the faintest flicker of hope, not for immediate healing, but for the possibility of something real, rebuilt on honesty rather than pretense. As I walked away to gather my things, the house looked different. The decorations, the leftover food, the fading music, it all felt like echoes of a dream that had collapsed in my hands. Just hours earlier, the evening had glowed with warmth, laughter, and the promise of celebration. It was supposed to be perfect. Instead, it had become a turning point, a spotlight exposing truths neither of us had been ready to face. One night, one confession, one moment that changed everything. But as painful as it was, I understood something important. Sometimes it takes a breaking point to reveal the truth. Sometimes a perfect beginning must shatter before real healing can begin. And in that quiet, uncertain space, I felt a small resilience awakening inside me, a reminder that even in the ruins, there is room to rebuild, to redefine, to rise. The party had fallen apart, yes, but maybe, just maybe, this was the night we finally stopped pretending and started becoming honest enough to heal. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe our channel Awesome Visual Story.